Hi, and welcome to the eCave. In this episode, I'm going to talk about an electricity price shock. But I'll also give you an overview of how you can read your electricity bill. This, of course, is not directly related to these vintage computers, but they do need electricity like all technology nowadays. So if you're interested in that, why not join me in the eCave? Well, thanks for joining me here in the eCave. It was back on the 1st of July this year when electricity prices skyrocketed here in Australia. So when I got my first electricity bill after the 1st of July, I got a price shock. My bill had gone up 23%, but I guess, and as I've heard, that wasn't the worst of it. Others had even a higher price increase than me. This prompted me, of course, to find a different electricity retailer, which I did quick smart and managed to get a slightly better plan with a slightly lower price. But it also prompted me to dig up 33 years of electricity bills and put them into a spreadsheet. I had to spread them all over my living room, sort them by year, and then it took me a couple of days to enter all the data into a spreadsheet. I was simply curious to see how electricity price had evolved over this 33-year period. So I'll be sharing that with you towards the end of this video. To my surprise, I also discovered when speaking with family and friends, very few of them, if any, actually understood their electricity bills. They simply didn't know what they were paying for and accepted the price shock as a simple fact of life. Most of them, if not all, didn't even think about switching to another retailer. What irks me the most, though, is the fact that some of them are not even on a suitable plan for their electricity usage. That means in this episode, I'm going to try to help you understand your electricity bill and the items on the bill and what they mean. I'll be using the bill that gave me the price shock to show you some of the confusing terminology used by some of the retailers, if not all of them. Towards the end, I'll also show you how electricity unit price has evolved over the last 33 years here in New South Wales, but I'm guessing it's quite similar in the other states. Now, before I get stuck into the electricity bill, I have to give you some high-level overview of how electricity is delivered to your house and who are the main industry players involved in doing that. That has changed a lot over the last 33 years, that's for sure. So let's get stuck into that to begin with. Then I'll show you my bill, and lastly I'll share with you my 33 years worth of price for electricity. In this very simplified overview, I'll give you a small insight into how the electricity system works in order for you to better understand what you see on your electricity bill. I won't go into a lot of detail, but you can pause the video and read some of the text where and whenever you like. Now, someone must generate the electricity, right? Here I've listed the main electricity generators operating in Australia. As you see, I've split them into two categories: fossil fuel generators and renewable generators. Both generate electricity, but using different resources. Fossil fuel generators use fossil fuels like coal and gas, whereas renewable generators use renewable resources like wind, sun, and water. Due to the need to be close to the resources they use to generate the electricity, the generators are usually located far away from cities and towns. This in turn requires a distribution network in order to deliver the electricity to the cities and towns. The generators send the electricity along high voltage transmission lines towards the cities and towns. These are the big towers you see in the countryside and into the cities. The towers dump the electricity into what are called substations, which are located near or in the cities and towns. That is where the electricity arrives and is then redistributed to the homes and businesses in that town or city. That's where the second distribution network comes in. That's called the low voltage transmission network. This network delivers the electricity along the wires on the poles which are in your street. From there, the wires are connected to each house. The wires are routed to the power board for each house, and the power board then distributes the electricity throughout the house. Now, nothing comes free, so of course you have to pay for the electricity you use. To do that, a power meter is installed into your power board. This power meter measures the flow of electricity going into the house as it's being used by the appliances running in the house. The power meter is installed and maintained by a smart metering company. There are several different smart metering companies in Australia. They all do the same thing or a similar thing. That is, they install the meter into the power board. They collect the usage data either manually or using smart wireless technology. And as you see, manual reading requires the smart metering company to dispatch a human every 3 months to all the households with a non-smart meter to read the data and bring it back to the smart metering company so they can put it into their metering database. So that means all the metering data goes to one of these several metering companies. The metering company, in turn, is then required to transmit the metering data to the Australian market operator, which is like a company which is owned by the states, federal government, and the electricity generators, distributors, and retailers. In essence, they all contribute funds towards this market operator, i.e. your funds. The Australian energy market operator keeps all the metering data from all households and businesses in Australia. This enables them to have a holistic view of how much electricity is being used in Australia, and they can also generate all kinds of reports from this data. They, on the other hand, do not issue any bills. This is where the energy retailers come into the picture. They are basically middlemen that buy and sell electricity to households and businesses. To enable them to issue bills, they are given access to the metering data. They only get access to metering data for their own customers. This system makes it a lot easier for customers to change retailers if they are unhappy with the service or the price from a particular retailer. The retailer issues the bills to their customers and charges for the electricity usage. There are two main charges on the bill: the usage fee, which is based on the metering data, and the service fee, which is a fixed fee for each day. I'll talk a bit more about that later. The retailers in turn buy electricity, then they have to pay the network distributors, which own the transmission networks, and they also have to pay the smart metering company a daily fee for the ongoing metering and support for their customers' power meters. Now, where do the retailers buy the electricity? A very good question. Well, this is where the national energy market comes into the picture. This is where the electricity generators offer electricity for sale and the retailers buy it at wholesale prices. This operates in many ways like a share market, which is driven by supply and demand. This means that the wholesale price of electricity can go up to thousands of dollars and down into negative values as well. It's a complicated market which I'm not going to go into any further than this. The national energy market is managed by the Australian market operator. You can think of them a bit like the stock exchange. Once a retailer has obtained enough electricity for its customers, it sells it to them at retail prices, which of course includes GST and their markup. Now, how they charge for it is entirely up to them, and this is reflected on your electricity bill. So let's first look at how we measure electricity usage. The usage is measured in kilowatts per hour. As you can see, 1 kilowatt is the same as 1000 watts. But by adding the word kilo in front, we can drop the 3 zeros after the 1. We do the same thing when we drive our car, for instance. The speedo is shown in kilometers. 1 kilometer is, of course, 1000 meters. The same goes for your water bill. The water meter measures the amount of water you use in kiloliters. A kiloliter is 1000 liters of water. All your appliances, on the other hand, have a power rating which is usually shown in watts, not kilowatts. For instance, if you look under your kettle to check its power rating, it will probably say 2000 watts or thereabouts. By adding the kilo in front and dropping the 3 zeros, it's easier to say it. 2 kilowatts, yes, say it. 2 kilowatts is easier to say than 2000 watts, let alone 10,000 watts and so on. For any appliance with a watt rating, you can easily convert it into kilowatt by dividing the number with 1000. For instance, a typical mobile phone charger might say on its label 10 watts. Well, divided by 1000, that is 0.01 kilowatt. That is a very low power consumption. But remember, you have other appliances which use much more energy than that. You can see some examples here. Your power meter simply measures continuously the flow of electricity that flows through it and logs it in kilowatts per hour. Now at the bottom here is an example on how you can calculate the cost of running an air conditioning unit for 1 hour a day over a period of a month. Now remember, you can pause the video if you want to read the text and check out the sample. There are basically 2 different types of power meters that are found in our power boards. The first type is the non-smart or semi-smart meters. The non-smart is the old analog meter which has a rotating disc and a number of dials. Then you have the slightly more advanced version of that with a rotating disc and a counter instead of the dials. These meters only show the total energy usage at any one time. They also have to be manually read, which is why they are only read by a human once every 3 months. So to work out your electricity usage for the last 3 months, the previous meter reading has to be subtracted from the latest one. This means it only gives you information on your total electricity usage over a period of 3 months. There's no breakdown of the usage. The next meter I call the semi-smart meter. It is basically a computer that can measure the electricity usage down to half an hour interval. This is because it can store a lot of measurements. It stores the measured data in different counters, which when read, can provide electricity usage down to half-hour intervals for each day. These semi-smart meters also have to be read by a human every 3 months. Now, why every 3 months, you ask? Well, it costs money to send a human to read these meters or collect the electronic counters from the semi-smart meters. The industry in the past settled on every 3 months as the optimum period for a meter read and a billing cycle. Can't we do any better than that, you might ask? Of course. This is where the latest smart meters come in. They do all the same things as the semi-smart meters, but much more. They can also transmit the data every few minutes to the metering company via a modem. The modem is simply like a mobile phone with a SIM card attached to the smart meter. If you have one, you can easily see that it has an antenna on the outside of the power board. Some of these smart meters can even transmit the electricity usage in real time or near real time. Sadly, not many retailers offer a detailed view of your electricity usage. Most of them have a customer portal which you log into, and the only thing you can see are your electricity bills. In some ways it's understandable, because if you have the non-smart meters, the data they have, especially from the analog meters, is simply how much you used over a 3-month period, which you can easily see on your bill. However, they can do a lot better with smart meters and even the semi-smart meters. I think it was Energy Australia, which was one of the few which actually upload your usage data to their system, and they allow you to view it down to 1 hour interval in their customer portal. Now that can only happen if you have a smart meter or a semi-smart meter. The best retailer we've had in this regard was called Mojo. They installed a smart meter with the wireless transmission, and then you could install an app on your phone and view the usage in detail. You could even connect to your meter live to see your usage real time, which can be a handy thing to do at times. Sadly, Mojo went into liquidation and therefore doesn't exist anymore. When your retailer wants to create your electricity bill, they obtain your electricity usage data from the Australian market operator and then use it to calculate your charges. The usage charge is calculated by multiplying the total amount of electricity used in kilowatt hours by the rate the retailer charges per kilowatt hour. This will appear as an item on your bill, and remember, it also includes a 10% GST. Sadly, there is no standard on what the usage is called. As I mentioned in my introduction, I've scanned all my bills over the last 33 years, and as you can see here, the name is all over the place. On my first bill, it was called Domestic. The last bill is called Peak 1. Why Peak 1? Well, I'll explain that a bit later. The second item on your bill will be the daily service charge. This is the fixed fee for each day covered by the bill period. This fee is supposed to go to the network distributors. Once again, the retailers have no standard name for this item. I've also detailed the names I found on my bills over the last 33 years, although it's only been 20 years or so since this item came in, and I'll explain that a bit later. We all want hot water for our showers, don't we? Well, getting cold water hot does require some energy. Some households use gas, others use solar heat pumps, some use the new hot water heat pumps, but for the rest of us, it's the hot water tank. The bigger hot water tanks use a lot of electricity to heat the water. In many ways, they are like your kettle, but they use 2 to 3 times the energy your kettle uses. This is why they are often on a separate circuit and then remotely controlled by the network distributor based on the network load. This means they are only turned on for short periods during off-peak hours, which are the hours in the day when least electricity is being used by everyone. As compensation, you are also only charged about half the normal rate for the electricity used by the hot water system. This will appear as an item on your bill, often called controlled load or off-peak. As you've begun to realize by now, there is once again no standard name for this. And again, I put the list of names for the controlled load I have had on my bills over the years. By the way, there are other items that can be controlled like the hot water. I gather you can get swimming pool pumps as well on a controlled circuit and pay less electricity to run them. In turn, you lose the control over when they run, as that is up to the network distributor. With the rollout of smart meters in New South Wales back in 2017, a new opportunity for a tiered billing system opened up. This is called the time of use. This is where the day is split into 3 time periods and a different rate is charged for each period. The smart meter is measuring the electricity usage but putting it into 3 different counters based on the period the usage occurs in. Broadly speaking, the periods are called the peak period. This is where you pay the highest unit price. Then you have the shoulder period, where you pay a bit less than the peak period. And then of course you have the off-peak period. This is a period you pay the lowest price. The idea behind this is meant to allow energy smart customers to save on their energy costs. An energy smart customer knows his household's energy profile. This means that they can maximize their energy usage during off-peak periods and subsequently reduce their energy usage to a minimum during peak periods. Now, what does all of that mean, you ask? Well, you might, for instance, do all your washing on the weekends during the off-peak period. You only start your dishwasher after 10 p.m. in the evening, once again during the off-peak period. You might have a gas stove for cooking, or in other ways avoid using an oven or a stove during the peak period, thus not consuming a lot of electricity. This type of billing is optional and isn't for everyone. So if you are on this type of billing system, your electricity usage will be itemized into the 3 buckets. Once again, there is no industry standard for the names used. I put a list of some of the names I've seen on other people's bills and mine, as they often use these names for the single rate bills as well. This explains why, if you're on a single rate, they often refer to it as the peak 1 rate or something similar, because they would use peak 1 for the peak rate and peak 2 for the shoulder rate and peak 3 for the off-peak rate. It's confusing, but that's the reality. It's time to show you a typical electricity bill and highlight some of the items detailed on it. I'll be using a bill from my retailer Alinta, which is the one that gave us a bill shock. Rest assured, I've already switched. However, first I'm going to show you one of the oldest electricity bills in my possession from 1991, just for fun. The bill was issued by Prospect Electricity, and at the time we were living in Sydney. As you see here, it covers 88 days of usage, and the electricity used is simply the previous meter reading subtracted from the present reading, i.e. no smart meters. At the time, Prospect charged you 12.44 cents for the first 290 kilowatt hours and a lower price of 9.52 cents for the remaining usage. As you can see, there is no daily service fee and no GST. This meant that the bulk of the electricity usage was charged at 9.52 cents. Now, based on the RBA inflation calculator, this would be equivalent to about 20 cents today. I guess we won't see these kinds of prices anytime soon. Let's put this away and I'll pull up my Alinta bill. I've chosen this Alinta bill due to the fact that it covers the period when the price increase occurred, which was on the 1st of July 2023. It will also show you how complicated and confusing these bills are. As you see, I've pulled up two of the main pages of the Alinta bill. The front page details the overall charge, but also provides you with an average daily usage in kilowatt hours, plus how that compares with similar households in your area. In our case, our usage is pretty low due to the fact that we have a 6.1 kilowatt solar system and a 9 kilowatt battery. This is of course reducing the amount of electricity we have to buy from the grid. I've been planning to do a video on our solar system as we've had it for a few years now, but that will have to wait for a few months. I've combined the itemized details from the second and third page of the bill on the second page. As you see, it itemizes everything twice due to the price increase from the 1st of July. To put this into context, I'll also pull up the notification I got from Alinta for the price increase, which showed the old rates and the new rates. It will help me highlight the massive confusion and difficulties people have when trying to understand their bills. So back to the second and third page. The first item is the supply period in days, which you can see here amounts to 30 days. This is then used to charge for the service fee, which is a daily fee. You will also notice that the service fee is charged twice. There is a daily service fee for the domestic electricity, i.e. what on this bill is called peak step 1 and peak step 2. Then there is a separate daily service fee which is a lot lower. This is for the controlled load 1, or what is the off-peak hot water. I've noticed on other retailers' bills that some charge two separate daily service fees, one for the peak step 1 and the other for the controlled load. Others simply charge one daily service fee for both. And as you see, they're both called daily service fee. No differentiation. I'm just guessing one is for the control load because it's a lot lower. Next you see some cryptic numbers, B1, E1 and E2. No, these are not characters in a children's cartoon, I'm sorry to say. These are the three counters from the smart meter. The first one, B1, is the counter that measures how much electricity my solar panels and battery sent to the grid. This is called standard solar, as you can see further down. The second one, E1, is the counter that measures how much electricity we have used from the grid. The last one, E2, is the counter that measures how much electricity we have used from the grid for our off-peak hot water tank, i.e. what is called the controlled load 1. The only reason I know these cryptic letters B1, E1 and E2 map to is because I've had to add all the numbers and work out the total kilowatt hour usage, and from that I could finally see what they were meant to represent. Yes, they don't make it easy, do they? Now, before going any further, let's look at the notification for the price increase. It tells me that from the 1st of July, my peak usage first will be 40.612 cents. Then the peak usage next and the peak usage remaining balance will be the same. According to my original contract, I'm on a single rate, which of course is still the case, but why on earth split it into three buckets with the same rate? It makes it confusing. I suspect that the billing system is trying to cater for the time of use customers at the same time as single rate customers. So they simply use similar terminology for both and use the 3 counters for the single rate as well. If it was time of use, the rate for each counter would be different. Now, to top it all up, this terminology, peak usage first, peak usage next, and peak usage remaining balance, has morphed into peak step 1 and peak step 2. Both with the same unit charge, and peak step 3 is nowhere to be found. All the counters are repeated twice in order to cover off the price changeover. The first counters covers off the first 4 days of the billing period with the previous unit prices, and the next lot of counters covers off the remaining 26 days with the new unit prices. You see, they even split the solar credits across the 2 periods, despite it being the same unit price. Why on earth does this have to be so complicated and confusing? I wonder if it's done deliberately to confuse customers, or perhaps they would blame their overcomplicated billing system. I wonder why it's overcomplicated though. The daily charge is broken down into the 2 different rates, one for 4 days and the other for 26 days. We are lucky that we get the pensioner discount from the New South Wales government, although it isn't all that much. It's simply a fixed fee per day which goes towards reducing the daily service fee. Sadly, these electricity bills are pretty complicated to understand. I've looked at all the other retailers we've had over the years, and they are all similar in that they use complicated terminology which suits them and their billing systems and have nothing to do with trying to meet the needs of customers understanding their bills. The bottom line though is the fact that if you are on a single rate, you pay a daily service fee plus a single rate for usage. If you're on the time of day rate, it gets a bit more complicated as you pay 3 separate rates for each period. The last thing I want to point out to you on this bill is the fact that every individual household has a unique national meter identifier number. The retailers must show that number somewhere on your electricity bill. As you can see, here it's abbreviated to NMI. This is an important number to know, especially if you want to find a cheaper retailer and save some money. I'll cover that off in a separate episode. Well, it's time to show you how the unit price of electricity has evolved over time. I've taken the unit price, which is the price per kilowatt hour of electricity for domestic use, from all my power bills over the 33 years and plotted it on a chart. The chart I'm showing you is called a flourish chart race. Pretty spiffy one, I think. It begins in October 1990 and ends in October 2023. The chart plots the unit price over this time, but I have also added the daily service fee as well when that kicked in. At the bottom, I've included the logo for the retailer that was supplying our electricity for that period. The different retailers came about due to mainly 3 reasons. Firstly, because we moved house. Secondly, because the retailer rebranded. And lastly, because we changed retailers when we had the excessive price increases on our power bills. We have been in the same property since November 2016, and all retailer changes since then have been due to us switching retailers for a better price electricity plan. So let's kick this off. As you will see, the daily service fee suddenly appeared on everyone's bills from the 1st of June 1996. It then begins to climb dramatically over the years. The next jump you will see is from July 2000. This is when the 10% GST kicked in and was added to all our bills. You then see the service charge steadily rising. As you see below the chart, I'm plotting all the retailers we have used in the past by showing their logo and the period they were serving our property. But the service charge and the domestic use charge simply continue to go up all the time. Once we get to November 2017, the daily service charge takes a big jump. This was Mojo, our retailer at the time. We quickly got rid of them. They've now gone under, I guess. And then the last spike is our Alinta price shock bill. Well, I hope you found this interesting, and I certainly hope you learned something. And I hope you can now better understand your electricity bills. The Flourish chart, I've uploaded it to the Flourish website, and I'll put a link to it where you can see that chart race, so to speak, and look at it as often as you like. It's interesting how the prices have changed over time. However, this is the end of this episode, but stay tuned. I'm also releasing, parallel to this one, the episode on how to look for a better price plan. So from the Energy Made Easy website. So thanks for visiting the eCave today.